Welcome to Beijing for the 2024 World Chinese Language Conference. Congratulations on being recognized as the Brilliance of Confucius Institute. I've learned that you initiate the Victoria Business Confucius Institute and have been admitted to promoting cooperation and understanding between Australia and China. So how do you feel about receiving this honor?
I'm actually very proud and at the same time flattered to have received the award. But such awards are a contribution of a whole team of people. It's not really me. I'm really proud to be associated with our Confucius Institute, or Confucius Institutes generally. I think they do important work in sharing Chinese language and culture.
This mustn't be your first time coming to China, right? How did you first become acquainted with China?
My first visit to China was 1990, and I have very fond memories of that visit. I remember in 1990 looking out the window of my hotel room at an intersection. It was a crowded intersection, but there was not one car in sight. The intersection was crowded with bicycles loaded up with boxes, agricultural produce and so on. This morning, as I came here, I looked and saw only cars. But those cars were modern cars. They were branded as clean energy vehicles for the most part. That really is an indicator of China's progress across that time.
I'm really curious about why, as a professor of accounting, you started working on international Chinese education programs.
But I've been Dean of the Business Faculty at Victoria University, and I did that for quite a long period of time. And across that period, I had the opportunity to travel to China on many occasions. China as a major economy in the world, now the second largest economy, Australia's largest trading partner, and of course China at the same time is a major source of Australian tourists and students who come to Australia to study, of course. Out of its 27 million, more than 1 million people who have a Chinese heritage themselves. So I thought it would be wonderful for our students to have a greater China understanding or awareness, a China literacy, if you like, yeah.
Since Australia's first Confucius Institute opened at the University of Western Australia in 2005, a total of 14 Confucius Institutes have been established. Among all these institutes, what are the biggest features and advantages of VBCI?
Apart from teaching Chinese language and culture generally, we have a business stream of Mandarin, but we do things like regular workshops on business topics such as trade between China and Australia, changes to the Chinese economy and what are the implications of those. It's changes in demography. What does that mean for trading opportunities for Australia and so on? We do some work directly with businesses and providing Mandarin classes in-house, and I have been spending time on this visit focused on the issue of creating new study tours that create opportunities for university students in both countries, but also opportunities for academics to travel to the other country. And we have some good plans for the coming year.
Do you think Australians who are learning Chinese have something in common?
When I advocated for the establishment of our Confucius Institute, I thought it would be for students, perhaps typically undergraduate students who are wanting to learn about China. And yes, that's a big part of who learns Chinese language with us. But I was then surprised about the number of academics from our own university who wanted to learn about China, because they teach Chinese students in Australia, and of course many of them travel to China to teach in China. And I thought that gave our university a workforce that was much more culturally aware. But in addition to those two groups, there's really a big diversity, a great deal of difference in who it is that begins the Chinese language journey. You know, we have business people, people who are retired and just keen to be active learners. There is also a large group of people who have Chinese parents or perhaps a Chinese heritage and they want to learn Chinese themselves, yeah.
What advice do you have for those who are interested in Chinese and China?
Just do it. just get on with it. I found my learning journey fun. What really fascinated me in learning the language was learning about the culture in parallel. I think of Chinese culture as being rich. It has such a long history. It has a lot of traditions. That history and those traditions have been learned by people generally so that they're able to share those stories. It's great.
This year, 2024, marks the 20th anniversary of the establishment of Confucius Institute. But it must be admitted that there are also some people who wear colored glasses to discredit Confucius Institute.
You don't shy away from asking direct questions. Yeah, it's a good question. It's appropriate to talk about this indeed. I have seen the view that you talk about, but for the most part, that's not the view that I encounter. The work of Confucius Institutes as being important as an opportunity to share Chinese language and culture, just in the same way that institutes from other countries also do. I think of Alliance Française of France, or the Goethe Institute from Germany, and the Italian Institute, and so on. I think it's great that each of those countries go about that work in sharing and understanding about each of our respective countries. Yeah.
Over the past year and more, China and Australia have maintained close communication and exchanges at all levels and have achieved positive progress. For example, more than 250 Australian companies participated in this year's China International Import-Expo. But looking into the future, do you think the Trump administration will have any impact on Australia-China relations?
Look, I think at this stage we have to say that there's still much that's unknown about how the Trump administration will unfold and what policies it will actually implement when it does come to office. But I see Australia and China in economic terms as being very tightly linked to each other, and so that whatever happens to China also happens to Australia. Adverse consequences of the tariffs that have been referred to under a Trump administration, I don't see that changes the need for China and Australia to trade together. I have expectations that are positive in economic terms. Australia and China needing to continue their economic relationship. Maybe in some ways it makes our relationship more important because the tariffs of a Trump administration, as talked about, might force trade away from the US on the part of many countries. Putting economics aside, Australia and China have good reason to have a strong relationship together. There's a long shared history. Chinese people have been part of Australia's early history, in particular during our gold rush era of the 1850s. Much of what's described when we're talking about country-to-country relations is really a description of how the governments of those countries are relating to each other. But at a people-to-people level, I think there's a different kind of relationship that takes place, a more human relationship. Yeah. And so at that level, I'm even much more positive. I'm keen that we generally expand the level of activity that we undertake and our engagement with people, give more and more people the opportunity to learn about China.